Immersing yourself in all things soccer ahead of this summer's World Cup? I'm Alex Abnos, senior sports editor from The Guardian. Whether you're a soccer beginner or you know the game inside and out, we've got you covered. From one of the fastest growing soccer newsrooms, The Guardian brings you in-depth World Cup coverage that gets into the winners and losers on and off the pitch. Read, watch, and listen as our journalists connect the dots between the games, the cultures, and this political moment. We'll have daily newsletters throughout the tournament, a global perspective, and a squad of Americans, including me, on the ground with the U.S. national team. Plus, if you want to test your soccer knowledge, try On the Ball. It's a game in the Guardian app, and it's really, really fun. And if you're into stuff like this...
Well, I think the problem is if you give footballers an inch, they will take a mile.
Is it too much when it's this close?
It's a bit much. It's a bit too real. Maybe you could just talk with a slight delay.
Be sure to listen to our Football Weekly podcast for on-the-move expert analysis. The Guardian, bringing you the whole picture on soccer. Search Guardian Soccer for more.
Taking care of your eyes shouldn't be a hassle. That's why Warby Parker is a one-stop shop for all your vision needs. Our prescription glasses and sunglasses are expertly crafted and unexpectedly affordable. Stop by a nearby store or use our app to virtually try on frames and get personalized recommendations. Did we mention we offer eye exams and take vision insurance too? For everything you need to see, head to your nearest Warby Parker store or visit warbyparker.com today. That's warbyparker.com.
Welcome to the Great Coaches Podcast.
To me, being perfect is not about that scoreboard out there.
This is a chance of a lifetime.
When you can understand the person, you can then work towards a common goal.
We are all on the same team.
Know your role and do it to the best of your ability.
Focus on the fundamentals. We've gone over time and time again.
Your defense has got to be better.
Leave no doubt tonight.
Great moments are born from great opportunity.
Hello and welcome to the podcast. My name is Paul Barnett, and here on the Great Coaches Podcast, we believe that there is no algorithm for leadership, and so we interview great sports coaches from around the world to try and find a couple of ideas to help us all be better leaders. Our great coach on this episode is Tom Maher. Tom is an Australian basketball coach. He started his career leading the Nunawading Spectres, ultimately taking them to 5 championships in the Women's National Basketball League. He would go on to win titles with Perth, Canberra and Bulleen, making him the most successful coach in the league's history. He also led the Australian national team to their first ever Olympic medal, a bronze at the 1996 Olympics and then silver at the 2000 Games. He's also coached the national teams of New Zealand, China and Great Britain. In all, he coached at 6 consecutive Olympic Games, and he was also the first ever foreign coach in the WNBA and was inducted into the FIBA Hall of Fame in 2021. And just before we go to the interview, today's podcast is brought to you by the Macquarie University Business School's MBA program. Designed to empower, challenge and transform, the Macquarie MBA gives you the business skills and knowledge you need to succeed in an evolving global economy. To find out more, search for Macquarie University Business School's MBA. And now, please enjoy our interview with Tom Maher.
You're listening to the Great Coaches Podcast.
Tom Maher, hello and welcome to the Great Coaches Podcast.
Thank you.
Tom, something easy to kick us off. Where are you in the world and what have you been doing so far today?
Today, Thursday's cleaning day. So I cleaned the kitchen and the TV room and the garage and the decking. That's what I did today. It took me 3.5 hours.
And of course,
you're in
the great city of Melbourne, where I'm from.
Yep. I love Melbourne. It's a beautiful place. It's like a lot of other great cities in the world.
We're going to talk a little bit about Melbourne as we talk about your story. We're going to talk about the many nations around the world where you've coached. And we're going to get to some of the great highlights of your career, the Olympic Games, etc. But in fact, why don't we start there, Tom? You've coached at 6 Olympic Games and you've led teams from 4 nations, Australia, China, New Zealand and Great Britain. And I am sure that on this journey, you've seen some great and maybe some not so great coaches. So maybe an easy one to kick us off. What do you think the great coaches do differently that sets them apart?
Well, it's actually easy to talk about bad coaches. the first thing that's really noticeable about somebody who's not going to last is it's all about them. They might, some of those people are good at getting a job, but they'll never last. And the other thing is their attention to detail. I think once you start scouting teams, if you notice that there's no attention to detail, they're in a lot of trouble. But with a good coach, so, like what makes a good pet? I mean, like there's many different shapes and forms and personalities. But I think basically, I think you've got to be a teamy sort of guy. For me, anyway, I've always been very teamy. I mean, nobody that I've ever been a teammate with would accuse me of saying it was all about me. Nobody would ever think that I was anything other than just being a good teammate with different responsibilities. My responsibility was to coach and to lead, and their responsibility was to play.
Well, you started learning about leading and coaching up on the community courts in the Northern Territory. Back then, you were just a young bloke travelling around Australia looking for a little bit of adventure. And I'm wondering, Tom, has that sense of wonder been part of your coaching style ever since?
Not really. I don't know if it's wonder. I think it might be wonder because it's a questioning thing. I'm either very good at something or I don't care. Like I don't try to be. I'm not one of those crazy guys that like play a weekend game of tennis and it's like they're playing for life and death. I mean, even if you win that game, you're still much the 5,000, worst player in the world. I mean, it doesn't, it's because that's not important. But like, I love cooking and I'm good at gardening and I'm pretty good with a pack of cards and basketball. So I really get into those things full on. And the thing that I learned when I was about 19 was a guy asked me, it was up on Gove, and they made I never saw it, but they made a golf course, and basically the whole thing was a sandbunker, right? And he said, I played footy, and he said, let's go up and have a game of golf. And there was no clubhouse for me. And I said, no. I said, I'd want to. I played social golf when I was a kid because we lived in the Sandbelt. I went to school in San Antec, but it occurred to me then that I didn't want to play golf because I'd never had a lesson in it. I had read a book about it, or when I got interested in backgammon, I immediately brought a couple of books and read all about it because I'm just a technical person. I want to know the way it is. And that was a realization that I'm a guy that needs to know the way it works. And I spend time, again, if something's important to me. So I'm somebody who has always, I used to do it a lot when I was younger. I'd set myself a task and I'm going to think about something in just a non-formal manner for a year. So if I'm sitting on the beach and I've got nothing to do, for 5 minutes I'll think about this. 1 year I was thinking about, what do I really think about rebound? And that had a profound effect on my possession game because I worked things out. Of course, I would read anything that I could get my hands on. Some of it's rubbish and just throw it away, but some of it you can steal ideas from and makes you a better coach. But that year that I did that, but I used to do that about lots of things. Spend a year. I would have done that for 10 years. Spend a year thinking about just this thing when I had a moment. So I studied the game and I thought through things. Why is it like? I was pretty good at biomechanics. In fact, I knew the principles of human movement. I think there was 84 of them off by heart, and so I could apply biomechanically to the movements. I can, to the analysis of the movement. So I did wonder and search out the best way, the right way.
Well, after the Northern Territory experience, you had a second early experience that helped you develop as a leader, and that was doing odd jobs, is the way I read it, for one of the all-time great coaches here in Australia, Lindsay Gaze, out at the stadium at Albert Park. And I'm wondering how that early experience working for Lindsay helped you evolve.
Well, I come back to Melbourne. I didn't, because by this stage, I had a sort of epiphany that I wanted to coach, and coaching was teaching. So I've got to go back, and I wrote to an old year 12 teacher, and asked her, is there a pathway to do physical education? And she explained to me there was 2 schools now that had just opened up the year before. And so I could come back and I could do a degree. So I went down there, and they liked me because, not because of my marks at high school, but because I'd been away from home for several years, and they liked the idea that I wasn't just picking a subject that sounded cool after high school, that I'd lived a bit and done a bit. And so they said, unfortunately, we give these places out in January. So, do some part-time schooling and do some odd jobs, and we'll have you next year. So I went up to Lindsay very early on and asked him if there was any jobs. He said no. And so I got a job in a chemical factory. That was messy. And then I got a job as a forklift driver. And all the time I kept asking, is this a job? And then anyway, the cleaner at that time was a really bright prospect basketball player, and he got a gig going to university in the US, which was unusual back in the 70s. And then so he walked up to the stadium, and he said, do you still want a job? I've got a cleaner's job. So I said, absolutely. So for a year, I did cleaning because I was only out of school part-time. And then when I went full-time, he did a very nice thing. I went to him and said, because, I had no money, My mum was the laundry lady across the road at the orphanage. Dad had a heart attack. He was a labourer, and he used to sweep up the post office exchange. And so I had to work anyway. So I said, I can't do the cleaning in the morning because, I'm going full time. He says, that's all right. You'd be a handyman. So I used to do all sorts of little jobs around the stadium, which gave me a lot of access. I was there all day, if I wasn't at school, and gave me a lot of access to anything that come in, any book or there weren't VHS in those days, but, and I knew all the American players, and they were always, forthright when I asked them questions. And, and Lindsay would sometimes sit down with me when I had a question for him. And, but what Lindsay did, he gave me opportunity by giving me a job and by keeping me on the job and keep me around basketball. And he never said once, I think you're going to be a great prospect as a coach. He never spoke to me like that. But he walked out of the office when I was doing some photocopying, and he didn't know I was in the room. And he was talking to a lady who was asking about her child's development and which club she should go to. She said, we could try Melbourne because they've got that Tom Maher there who's going to be pretty good. And he never said it face to face, but anyway, I took it on board.
It's a great story about one of the all-time greats. So your career goes on from there, and you move along, and all of a sudden you're the head coach of the Nunawading Spectres, and they win 5 championships in a row. That's not what I'm going to ask you about. I want to ask you about the advice you were given around about that time to broaden your horizons, which leads you down to Hobart, and you coached their men's side in the WNBA. So you've gone from the women's Nunawading Spectres to the men's. But you were sacked from that role, and I'm wondering how it went on to shape you.
It was a great experience. I'd take any chance I can get to get back to Hobart. It's such a beautiful place. And the food and wine there is way over. They punch way over their weight for food and wine. But no, that was a great experience. It taught me a huge amount because when I was a very successful coach of juniors. And then I got to be assistant. Ray Thompson gave me a job as his assistant. to the senior team, and I coached the second team. And then I took over as the head coach of that team. And that team had Sharon Deakin and Robin Maher, Robin Gull at that stage. Actually, no, it didn't have Robin Gull. It had Sharon Deakin. Sharon Deakin was an Australian player who was a phenomenal player, but her body let her down in the end. She broke her knee, and then she got this and that. But, she started for Australia. And then Robin came along, and Robin started for Australia straight away. And then, so I had two Australian players, and I had some very good soldiers, they just were good. And if you got two great players, if anybody comes along and gives you any grief, it's see you later, mate, I used to, in my folder, I used to carry around a transfer form just in case, you're not happy, take that, fill it in, mate, off you go, so I had either great players, truly great players, or really good people, really, and people who could play, they could defend, we could defend. That was my thing. And so, and then Michelle Timms and Shelley Gorman, they're 17-year-olds, they want to break into the league. And so they both, in the same year, come and ask to play with us. This is 85. And so we'd already won 83, 84. We didn't win in 85, but we won 86, 87, and so on and so on and so on. And they came because Shelley, I'm not exactly sure why we were very, very successful, I suppose. And Shelley went, no time she was in the Australian team. And Michelle came and she used to go, she was a Bulleen junior and used to pass our court on Thursdays when we did individuals. We did individuals in Court 1L Park, and every player, the whole 10 players would turn up from 4 to 6. I just said, you have to be there for 1 hour, and we're going to work on our skills for an hour. Well, the whole team turned up every week. Now, don't forget, some are students, some are workers. They all just found a way to get there. And she walked past just before 5 o'clock when she had a training, and she said, I heard her, she didn't say it to me, but I heard her say it. She said, I used to watch them train, and I wanted to be a part of a team that trained like that, because those girls were trained. So we were terrific trainers and great players. And then I had great trainers, I had winners, I had great players. But see, that Sharon got hurt, so she was out. But I still had the starting 1, 2, and 3 in Australia, in my team, playing the 1, 2, and 3. And then, so I go to Hobart, who had never had a winning season, I don't think. Well, maybe they had one when they had Carfino. And they were 0-8. And I think we might have gone, I think we went 50-50 for the rest of the year. And then the next year, okay. And then the third year we started off very poorly. We had a very poor mix. And a lot of that was my fault, because I'd never coached. I thought I could coach anybody to be good, Now, some of those guys were good, and they would have been good in another team. But we had too many players that weren't quite good enough. And maybe, again, I believe a couple of those guys at least would have been good in other teams. But when you put us all together, we just weren't a good team. And our imports weren't quite working out. And so the team was looked bad, played bad, was bad, and got dispirited. And so, coaches get fired. But it was a great example, because I learned that I can't make anybody great, just everybody. I can really help a really talented player be good, and I can help a good soldier be good. But if I can't make, a Robin Maher out of, anybody. So that was a great experience and a real eye-opener for me. And I quite frankly loved the whole thing. And Lute Olsen had told me once, we had a discussion on the beach in San Diego once, and he said that he talked about when you get fired, somebody got fired in the US and they were making a big song and dance about it. He said, you just walk away. He said, it's just not, you just don't cry, don't act like a victim, And I had the thought that, well, coaches sack people every day. Look, somebody wants to start, you don't let them start. Somebody wants to get minutes, you don't play them. You know, it's a kind of sacking. You know, somebody wants to get on the team at the start on the roster, and you don't pick them. Well, you know, so you know you cut somebody here and there, so they sack people all the time. So I was committed to not, you know, being all sooky about it. So the first thing I did was invited all our sponsors and friends to a barbecue at my place, and we had an interview with the main newspaper down there, and the guy wanted to take a picture of myself and my assistant coach looking all sad. We said, we're not going to do it. We're not sad. We're not going to do it. You know, like I said, quite frankly, look, I don't think they should have fired me, but I totally 100% understand what I did. And I understand that it's their, you know, it's in the realms of their abilities to do so. So and then the next thing I did was I walked around the town, the main streets of town, you know, because I wasn't going to hide away or anything. And I had to stay in Hobart anyway for 3 months because my wife was playing with the Hobart women's team, and they went on to win the championship. So so for 3 months there, I went and got a job with Australian fine wines, Tasmanian fine wines, selling wine, you know, doing wine tastings. That was great. That was a great experience.
Not a bad backup to being a coach down in Hobart, one of the world's great kept secrets. You talked a little bit about Lute Olsen there. We've talked about Lindsay Gaze. You mentioned Ray Tomlinson. You've had some great mentors, Tom. You've been really lucky, I think, in that regard. But what has having them taught you about the importance of being a mentor for other coaches? I know you're working, for instance, with Michelle Timms now.
Look, Lute Olsen was my mentor, hands down. But what Lindsay and Ray both did was they provide mentorship by if I had a question to them, but that they weren't actively trying to, you know, make me better or anything like that. But if I ever had, they always had time for me if I had a question. And so you know, I thank them for that. But it'd be wrong to say they were all equal because it was Lute Olsen. Well, Lute Olsen that really took me by the hand. He saw something in me, and he provided fantastic opportunities for me to learn, you know. So, you know, he was a great man. And I've always been willing to help. I think it's hard for me now because, you know, because I'm a FIBA Hall of Famer and was 6 Olympic coaches, and in the US, people would be more likely to come up and say, oh, can you give me some advice? But in Australia, we're reticent to do that. You know, we sort of, you know, movie stars can walk down the street in Australia. You know, people aren't going to go and ask for an autograph or stop them in the street. But, you know, I think people, you know, it's like when you do a coaches convention. And at the end of your talk, you say, okay, has anybody got any questions? And you'll get some people ask questions. But then when you walk out, there'll be 50 people come after you and want to know something. I think it's because they don't want to look silly in front of their peers, you know. And I think they're careful about coming up to a coach and asking, you know, whether they think that would make them look little. I was totally the opposite. I'd ask anyone. I didn't care. I didn't care if I made a fool of myself. I'd ask the stupid question. I did a couple of times. You know, when everybody laughs in the room, I didn't care. I was the guy that asked the questions. You know, I was the guy that carried a notepad with me and a pencil. So, yeah, I'm actively about to start working with a coach who approached me because I think I can help him technically. So that'll be good. And I work with Michelle Timms and you know, her assistant. So she runs this incredible academy for kids under 13 years and younger and different level groups. And I work 2 hours a day on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday for 8 weeks of each school term. and I take one court, she takes the other court, we swap over. And it's a really great thing. It keeps you involved. And the young assistant, she's got a good young people. And, you know, sometimes I think there's one girl there that I think could be a really good coach. So I try to, you know, give her some ideas without, you know, overdoing it. And, yeah, I think she's going to be a head coach one day.
Tom, you always talked about the performance themes in articles I read about you. Your team had performance themes which guided their development.
Yeah.
But you didn't really unpack it in any of those articles. So I'm wondering if you could share a bit about these performance themes, what they were and how they worked.
Well, when I got the Australian job, and the first training is at the end of January. There was a traditional training camp in January over the long weekend. And, you know, I had Australian players in my Nunawading team, but so I rock up to training and I'm there. I'm the first guy there, you know, like I'm early. I don't like tardiness. And so I'm waiting there on my own. It's really hot in summer. And Rachel Spawn, you know, comes in, who's a magnificent specimen in her bodysuit. You know, she's listed up at 10, she's 9. And she walks in, I'm thinking, God, that girl is a great player. She looks $1 million. She's 6 foot, you know, 3 or 4. She's already been an Olympian. What if I'm not up to it? Because I was always mindful of that Olympics where the manager of the sprint team took 2 of the sprinters. They all won. They were all picked to come 1, 2, and 3. And one of the guys went on his own, and the other 2 went with the manager. And the manager misread the time of the final, so they missed the race. And the guy that turned up and got there on his own, he won the race. And I thought, and then the injured party said, you know, that guy's not a bad guy, and he could, you know, work hard, be a good manager, and get another gig. He said, but that was my chance. I'm done. And I thought, God, I never want to be responsible for that. And so with those 2, you know, thinking I was about to be, you know, I had a team with some good people now and some special people. Now the whole team's special. And I don't want to be the one that screws up. So I thought, what can I do? So I thought, I'm gonna write out. Because when I'm going up, you know, people will say, yeah, it's not the right thing, Tom. But nobody ever said what the right thing was. So I thought I'd formalize what the right thing was. And I studied what success is, and I wrote the 7 themes of success. And yeah, so, and then I explained what they were. They weren't a lot of, you know, like statements of you know, motherhood statements. That they weren't like that. I worked through them, and every evaluation we did either team or individuals. We did it in relation to the team. You know, so. Like the first thing is we want to be a team in great physical shape or an individual in great physical shape. So, and we said what that meant, you know, like what your skin fold should be, how whether your aerobic capacity is good, what, you know, if you're lifting enough or whatever. And people would mark themselves. We had a mark out of 6 because you had 5. They always mark the middle one. So you had to be above or below the line with 6. And, you know, if the coaches were, you know, all giving this player a 4 and she gives herself a 1 or a 6, then we go, hey, we're way off track here. And then we would discuss it, you know, like the coaches think very differently to what you think. So we need to discuss that. And we would do all our evaluations, every evaluation in line with that. So we used it, we made it a working, living document, and I refer to it all the time, you know. So it was a great blueprint, and it was you know, it's one guy even stole it and put it in his book as if he wrote it. But anyway, I suppose I stole a few ideas. But, you know, it was just those 7 things. And I heard an Australian player who was playing in France, was in France at a club team, was asked a question about the Australian themes. And that was actually the current Australian coach. And she spoke about the themes and how the team, you know, bought in. They really did buy in. And so it was a great, I think, I'm very proud of it. It was a great thing to help people with,
Can you remember those themes, Tom? If I put you on the spot.
Yes. The girls had a rhyme from the first one is I won't give you the whole thing, but the first one was a team of great physical shape. So if you're a secretary, are you drunk when you get to work? Then you're not in great physical shape. You know, have you got a problem sleeping at night? You're not in great physical shape. You know, are you overeating? You know, you're likely to have a heart attack. You're not in great physical shape. So I can twist it around to give corporate speeches, which I used to do. 2 is you have to handle adversity. What does that mean? 3, you've got to be assertive. 4, you have to be relentless persistence. With a team that shows relentless persistence. 5, a great defensive team. Okay. 6 or 7 was a great we team. Oh, and 6 was you have to be multi-skilled. So I didn't want players that say, I'm the 5 man, right? Well, can you switch onto a 1? No. Well, why not? You need skills. Now, even, look, some, we call them dinosaurs, you know, really tall, slow players. I've seen plenty of those players. If they don't panic and they apply techniques, be quite successful at switching on to 1s, you know. You'd think that's an automatic mismatch, which it is usually, but, you know, they can get by. Jenny Whittle, in particular, in the Australian team, was fantastic at switching on to small people. She was a dinosaur. But, you know, so it was about having a lot of motor skills, like different skills.
I want to pick up relentless persistence if I can. I heard Sandy Brondello talk about it actually when we interviewed her, but it's a theme in year 7. It actually could be a motive for your own life and the way your life's played out. But Tom, what have you learned about finding that balance between relentless persistence and obsession?
Well, I'm not obsessive unless it's something that I care about. So it's a, you know, like I'm a relaxed person unless I'm watching basketball. I see something, you know, stupid. But I'm a relaxed person. But you know, with basketball, I was incredibly, and this was pointed out to me. You know, they said, "Could you say this was at the just after I won the FIBA award, which of course was a magnificent thing, a great tribute. I'm so happy about it. I said, how would you describe your coaching? And I tried a few words. I said, yeah, I would have said passionate. I said, yeah, I guess I was passionate. You know, so I was very passionate about basketball. I was passionate that everybody made a contribution defensively. I was passionate everybody followed the rules. You know, you know, I was passionate with that. But if I'm just watching the TV, you know, or even when I'm cooking, I love to cook, and I like to be skillful at cooking. But you know, I'm not on the edge about it. I'm relaxed about it. With basketball, because I was good at basketball. I was good, and you know, there's that saying that pick something, get good at it, because you can't love something unless you're good at it. So I picked basketball, and I worked really, really hard to get good at it, and I felt myself actualized. I was as good as you know. Well, I felt that way, and you know, so I was very passionate about, you know, having players do their best, and you know what, you know, when you have to do those what do you call it, personality reports, you know, you have to fill in, tick 1,000 boxes. The one I last did when I was in China, the thing that it come back with was that I was somebody who could handle a bad loss and move on. You know, if I could let it go, and I could. I was good at that. I'd be devastated if people didn't do their best. But if they do their best and we lose, I can definitely live with that. You know, I mean, would I be disappointed? Well, of course, you try to win everything, but you know, these people that should win by 40 and win by 20 are joking when jumping up and down. They didn't perform as well as they could. And people are devastated because they lose by 3 points to somebody who should beat them by 50. Shouldn't be hanging their heads. Of course it's disappointing, but you still did really well.
Immersing yourself in all things soccer ahead of this summer's World Cup, I'm Alex Abnos, senior sports editor from The Guardian. And whether you're a soccer beginner or you know the game inside and out, we've got you covered. Read, watch, and listen as our journalists connect the dots between the games, the cultures, and this political moment. We'll have daily newsletters throughout the tournament, reporters on the ground with all the big teams, and the legendary Football Weekly podcast. The Guardian, bringing you the whole picture on soccer. Search Guardian Soccer for more.
If your eyes are the windows to your soul and your glasses are the windows to your eyes, then it's pretty important to find your perfect frames. That's why at Warby Parker, we've made shopping for eyewear as easy and fun as can be. Peruse endless styles in our stores or use our app to virtually try on frames and get personalized recommendations. To find your next favorite pair of glasses, sunglasses, or contact lenses, or to locate your nearest Warby Parker store, head over to warbyparker.com. That's warbyparker.com.
Tom, what have you observed about the power of leaders within the player group?
It's essential. When I look at, say, AFL football or something, and I think, or anything at all, my first thought is, if they're not doing so well, but they're perceived to have enough talent, my first thought is there's every chance they don't have that player leader that everyone follows. Michelle Tim said in an interview once that when things are bad, if things are a little bit anxious out there, she says, I just look to Robin and I see Robin is absolutely in the moment. And then I get back in the moment too. So
Robin, of course, being your wife, also the captain of the Australian team.
Yeah. Well, she was captain before we got married. She was captain, I think, before I started going out. But I married well for a young coach. So Robin was an unbelievable leader. Some people lead with their intellect, and some people lead by example, and some people lead by both. So there's difference, but Robin is a very either-or thinker. So, good decision makers don't have 10 options. But 9 of them are not so good, and some of that 9 are going to be terrible. But Robin thinks either that way or that way, yes or no, on or off. So she's got every chance of making a good decision because, like a professor at Queensland University once asked if I could assist him in, or not assist him, do it all. He wanted to print a book, to write a book about what makes great leaders. I said, well, he wanted me to do like 30 hours of video, and I said, mate, there's no, you're welcome to come down and do it yourself. But I said, I can't do that. But so I noticed when I left and went to Hobart, there were some terrific guys, and I think one of them or two of them could have been leaders, given better players around them and given their age. They were quite young. But we had nothing like the leadership we had at Nunawading. Nothing. And so, and plus, I kept overreaching. So they just wanted to make the 8, the top 8. It was the top 8 or top 6, I can't remember. I wanted to win the championship. I was fanciful. We didn't have a team that could. I just thought I could get it there. Well, it was ridiculous. So that taught me a big lesson about, it's not where you finish, it's where you should finish. So if you have a season and come third, where should you have come? Are you're disappointed? Like the committee will have a meeting about, we wanted to win it this year, but were you good enough to win it? Like, if the best team wins it, you were third best, so that's okay. But if you should finish third, you finish 5th, that's not okay. So you should finish where you should. So obviously everyone wants to win it. That's just human nature.
Tom, I've heard you talk about and this is the quote, players taking on the personality of the coach. Now that was told
that was told to me actually, and I've repeated it, but I think it's true, but just to a degree. I mean, they don't. I was an aggressive, persistent personality, aggressive in a good way. Not violent aggression, but aggressive in a good way, and passionate type of person. And as a coach, and I think that the players I coached, they all to some degree adopted that. Not everyone, but Australians certainly did, and the New Zealanders did, and the China's such a different culture, and it's because of our cultures are far apart. I was careful not to just assume that, I understand everything about them and they should do everything that I'm not going to come in and say, yeah, well, back in Australia, we do it this way, like as if they've got no idea. So, that they were different, but some players did, the players, certainly the players I coached in Australia, the players that were good enough did. And I think that's true. I think if, trying to give you a good example, but, players want to win. And, I know of one player who's a fantastic player. And I don't know, to talk about this, but she spoke about this with somebody else who told me, but she's not happy with the coach because she's happy with him in general, but she's not happy that he doesn't run any go-to plays. So, like you need go-to plays. You need something, that guy's in foul trouble. So whoever that guy guards, we're going to run this play to you, right? That guy is a poor defender. So whoever that guy guards, you're going to take him off the dribble, right? Unless it's it macks up in a big, but then you're just going to go straight to the block. But you need things like that. So some players don't love everything. I'm sure there's players didn't like everything that I did. But I think there's a degree of, they don't become many years, but there's a degree of, passionate, aggressive play that comes out in the teams I play with. I reward possession a lot. And I reward good defense. So I think that helps people become better possession players and better defensive players.
Tom, I get the impression that you're a big believer in clarity being kindness when it comes to communication.
Absolutely.
Yeah, would that be a fair observation?
Absolutely. I remember the ice cream message. You're doing people a disservice. That the manager.
What's the ice cream message?
Oh, you the point is covered in a mountain of ice cream. So the manager who has a worker come to his office and says, "Oh, how are you, Bill? How's the kids? How's the wife? Geez, I love your car. It looks great. And that tie you're wearing the other day, where do you buy that? You look so great." And all that, and by the way, you spend all your time at the water tank. So, I mean, did he get the message? Or did he hear everything's great? So, I was always specific. You can be truthful and not emotive about it. I don't say. I stumbled across truth as a way to go early and stayed with it. I discovered that's the way. So I never told players lies. Did I tell a lie? Of course, I've just told lies. Everybody's told lies. But I never told a player a lie, And that's why I used to say to them, be careful the question you ask because you might not like the answer. But I was huge on scouting. I used to scout our team as much as the opposition. So we'd have a video of our performance, and every player would get a video evaluation, but points that I wanted to make would be in the team evaluation. So I'd say, well, last time I was at China, one of my assistant coaches, who's now the head coach, she was so good that I let her do the the video work, and Timsy would take the scouting work. But you know, I've worked with Timsy for years, so I don't just say to somebody, "You do the scout for me." I do it myself. I don't trust anyone else to do it until I do trust them. You know, so we would, and then so there's individual evaluations, written and on the tablet, and there's and that goes directly to the person, and there's team evaluations that are at meetings with the whole team. So, you know, if there's this thing in basketball where a player on offense, that his team will lose the ball, and he'll run back with his opponent as if, you know, got my man, you know, there they are. Oh, here she is. Oh, God, I hate that. That goes up because you're supposed to be in fast break defense. You're not supposed to be jogging back to you with your man. You should be back down there, turned around, facing where the ball carriers come from. So that's fast break. You've got to follow the rules of fast break defense. So I would show an instance of that. If that ever happened, yeah, after a while, it happens because nobody wants to be up on the big screen like that. But you know, if we'd work, you know, also you have to work at things enough to cover things enough to be critical. Because if you've given somebody 2 minutes instruction on how to move their feet defensively, and then they get beaten in a game, you can't, you know, deride them for not being able to be technically good. You haven't given enough time. You know, you can point it out to them, but you can't, you know, be abusive in any way. That's just not fair. So, you know, if we put enough time in drilling an explanation or something, and then in a game that person couldn't get it done, that would be up on the big screen, you know. That's just not good enough. But also, you know, any great efforts of running, you know, the player that makes a great effort to fly the floor, or you know, any really clever passing, you know, things that might get overlooked, or any you know, great help, you know, rather than the spectacular shot. Everybody knows, you know, everyone knows that's a good thing. So we'd show those little bits, you know, good teamy things like, you know, somebody call for the ball at the appropriate time, really help the ball handler out, you know, not spectacular, but a help. We'd put that up there.
Immersing yourself in all things soccer ahead of this summer's World Cup, I'm Alex Abnos, senior sports editor from The Guardian. And whether you're a soccer beginner or you know the game inside and out, we've got you covered. Read, watch, and listen as our journalists connect the dots between the games, the cultures, and this political moment. We'll have daily newsletters throughout the tournament, reporters on the ground with all the big teams, and the legendary Football Weekly podcast. The Guardian, bringing you the whole picture on soccer. Search Guardian Soccer for more.
Every idea starts with a problem. Warby Parker's was simple. Glasses are too expensive. So they set out to change that. By designing glasses in-house and selling directly to customers, they're able to offer prescription eyewear that's expertly crafted and unexpectedly affordable. Warby Parker glasses are made from premium materials like impact-resistant polycarbonate and custom acetate. And they start at just $95, including prescription lenses. Get glasses made from the good stuff. Stop by a Warby Parker store near you.
Tom, I've got another interesting quote from you. If I could give it to you and then ask the question. You say, players have to have the courage to make a fool of themselves, do something stupid, because that's just natural learning. In fact, you talked earlier about not being afraid to ask questions that might appear stupid to others. But in a team, what needs to be in place for everybody to embrace this type of learning style?
Well, that's big for me now because I'm coaching kids from 8 to 13, right? So a lot of my thinking is on how they can stay in the game, you know, with focus in the moment and also about winning, you know. You know, I agree, you have to win, you must win. But what's winning? I mean, one way you can win is up on the scoreboard. That's one way. I can give you another 1,000 or at least 100 of ways to win. You might make a good pass. you might show you're 20 down and you might try defensively as hard as you can. That's another way to win. You might say a positive thing to a teammate. That's another way to win. You might do something foolish, like fall over, right? But you bounce straight up and don't worry about it. You know, players, I teach kids, look, don't you dare miss a shot and hang your head, because that's not winning. Winning is showing that you okay, I missed a shot, but I'm strong. I'm showing my teammates I'm strong and they can trust me because I'm strong. Because I'm not a big sook that's going to worry about, don't want any negative body language. It's a team game. You affect everybody. So I'm always working on that with kids. No, we don't have any bad body language at Shelton's Academy. And there's lots of things you got to teach them. There's, how to use their voice. How do you play in a team environment, whether that be business or sport, and you can't be heard. If you're going to say switch, what's that? But you go to switch. That's like a command, and in a positive way. That's effective communication. And being an effective communicator, being a leader, isn't like being Napoleon. It's just like, I'm open. Like, so I'll say, here, you've got an option now. You can pass them if you wish. There's a screen come in, and I hear that. That's effective communication. I can go to the appropriate technique. So that's good leadership. A teammate that gets distracted for a moment can get back in the moment by a good leadership. A teammate saying, "Come on, stay focused." That's good leadership. That's good management. So yeah, I agree. You got to win, but there's a lot of ways you win. And if you're like, again, I go back. If you're 30 points better than your opposition, and you win by 15, well, you did win one way. You won on the scoreboard. But there's a lot of ways you didn't win because you should have won by 30, and you need to address that.
Tom, maybe just one final question, if I can, and I'd like to play back a quote before I ask it. You say, "Look, I'm not talking about winning a championship. I'm talking about helping you to self-actualize, to be the best you can be by giving you techniques and having you work dynamically and having you work within the framework of the team." And the question I'd like to close with is, how do you hope the people you have coached describe the impact that a focus on self-actualization has had on their life?
I've had some very moving experiences, actually. I've had several people come to me and make sure I knew they appreciated my help. So it's very moving, that. And I was very grateful. So just give me a moment. But yeah, I'm very grateful, very grateful. So they've actually told me I made a big difference. One girl even said I helped make her a better person. Go figure. But I wasn't going to tell her she was, but anyway, crazy. But no, it's she was a superstar. And it's funny that at the end of players' careers, that's when they tend to come to you and say, I got a little note. Players they don't want to upset the coach that they're with, so they're going to say, "Oh, the greatest coach I ever had was 2 years ago when I was playing so and so." Nobody's going. They don't do it, right? And nor should they. Why should they? But I got a note from a national player who said, "Look, just want to let you know, I don't want to say it out loud, but I just want to let you know you're the best coach I ever had. And you helped me a lot." So that's a really nice thing, So I hope so. I'd much rather be appreciated than unappreciated. So You know, I'm a natural human being. So, I try to, and when you're as passionate about something as I am in basketball, it's about growing. You know, if you've got, it's about growing everybody, yourself included. It's about you're a company as a team environment. And if you've got somebody like, you know, that when you're, now everybody's seen this. You're at an airport somewhere, on a plane somewhere, waiting, and the baggage handlers are loading the plane with baggage. And one of those guys is throwing the baggage around and, you know, no care at all. And that guy is letting that business down. Is he going to send him back? Well, I don't think so, no. But it's gives people a weaker perception of that business, even in a small, for a moment, because they're not going to, it's not something they're going to remember for the rest of their life. But for that, in that moment, and for a little time, you know, you never know. Next time, they might go with another airline. Who knows? But I just think that when you're part of something, you should represent that. And if you're not happy being there, you should work not at pulling that group down, but working towards getting somewhere else. You know, finding another opportunity where you may be happier. Because you know, being a disgruntled employee and not giving your best is no way to be successful. No way to help your self-esteem. I mean, players that in our we team theme, the number 7 thing, we talk about you can't be in a clique in a team. You know, you can have your best mate or your best 2 mates in that team, but you can't gather 2 other people together and go, oh, isn't that coach terrible? Isn't that player over there? She's just one of his favourites because, you know, you 2 should play before her. You can't have that. It's a cancer. You can't have selfishness. You have to have very positive things. And sure, everybody wants to play long minutes. Everybody does. But you have to understand. You have to understand and put your case forward.
Tom, it's been great reading about you, learning a bit more about your successful career. 6 Olympics, FIBA Hall of Fame. It's so many championships. It's a terrific story, and I thank you for sharing it with us today.
Thanks very much. It was a pleasure.
Hi, everyone. You have been listening to the great coach, Tom Maher. I hope you enjoyed Tom's story and found a couple of ideas that you can bring back to your own team for discussion. When I was listening back, doing the edit, some of the things that really stood out for me were his focus on learning and how this meant he was never afraid to ask, in his words, stupid questions. He carried a pad and pencil with him, and he made no apologies for his goal of learning from whoever he could. His 7 themes of success, which he described as 1, great physical shape, 2, handling adversity, 3, being assertive, 4, relentless persistence, 5, a great defensive team, 6, multi-skilled, and 7, a great we team. And his thoughts on winning, and how this isn't just confined to the scoreboard, and it's important for your own development to learn that there are many ways to win. I hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. And just before we go, if you have any feedback, then please let us know. Just like @PClarkPerform, who said, excellent, a really novel approach that works really well. #leadership. Thanks, PClarkPerform. We love the interaction with the people around the world who listen. It keeps us going. And so if you have any feedback or comments, please let us know. And if they're positive ones, let a friend or 2 know as well. All the details on how to connect with us are in the show notes or on our website, thegreatcoachespodcast.com.
Business is booming. But you know what really helped? Xero, the accounting platform for small businesses. I used to think spreadsheets were just part of it. Ugh. But real-time cash flow? Wow. Invoices that chase themselves? Even better. Books that automate? That's a big one. And I can keep track from my phone while I get the job done. No spreadsheet in sight. What a life. Do right by yourself and your business and search XERO for your free trial. Conditions apply.
Immersing yourself in all things soccer ahead of this summer's World Cup, I'm Alex Abnos, senior sports editor from The Guardian. And whether you're a soccer beginner or you know the game inside and out, we've got you covered. Read, watch, and listen as our journalists connect the dots between the games, the cultures, and this political moment. We'll have daily newsletters throughout the tournament, reporters on the ground with all the big teams, and the legendary Football Weekly podcast. The Guardian, bringing you the whole picture on soccer. Search Guardian Soccer for more.
Working on building a dream space, but don't know where to start? At the Home Depot, we can help you bring your dream project to life. Whether you're building a backyard oasis, a podcast studio, or a wellness space, we've got everything you need in store and online. With project guides and free delivery options, it's easy to go from dreaming to doing. The Home Depot, how doers get more done.